started. I'm going to call this meeting to order. 6 p.m. This is a regular meeting of IVCSD Community Services District. Announcing that the meeting is being recorded. And Jonathan, can you do roll call?
Director Brandt.
Here.
Director Geis.
Here.
Director Bertrand.
Here.
Director Freeman.
Here.
Director Hedges.
Here.
Director Nguyen.
Here.
Director Thurlow.
Here.
Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that IVCSD sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. And with that, we'll go to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to pull? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Motion made by Thurlow. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Geis. Any public comment on the consent agenda? All right. We'll bring it back to the board and we'll go to a roll call vote.
Okay, Director Brandt.
Yes.
Freeman.
Yes.
Bertrand.
Yes.
Hedges.
Yes.
Thurlow.
Yes.
Geis.
Yes.
Nguyen.
Yes.
All right, now we're going to go to the public comment period. So this is the time for any of the members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda, but are within the subject jurisdiction of the Board of Directors. Any requests to speak on items not on our agenda? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public comment period and we will move to discussion action items. And the first item we have is for the food distribution program. And so I'll hand it over to Jonathan.
Great. So this is maybe a smaller version of what I originally expected to bring forward today, but in just 2 weeks with other things going on. I think this is actually a really good first step for us to maybe look at, or just at least to also look at pricing for what this could cost to do even more food distribution or different model. But I worked with Leonore at St. George Youth Center to put this together. She put it together. I just kind of told her what we were looking for. And so basically they already operate Tuesdays 10 to 12. They're running out of funding to do anything. And they currently serve around 60 households, and they'd like to up that up to about 100. So their monthly expenses is about $100 a week for food, and they're giving out things like care packages. It's open to the public. They get a mix of students and families who do go. And what they're asking for is also funding for their staff time and supplies to make it happen, because they don't have the funding to continue operating this in any way. So that's why they had actually already requested from us support. So it kind of just really coincided really well with what our board asked to propose. So I asked her to just give me the cost of what 1 month will be, which is $1,120 for them to do this. And so they would basically be, it's every week the operation of the 2 hours plus the time before and after to get it set up and pick up the food and all that and arrange it. A month would be $1,120. 2 months is $2,240. 4 months $4,480. Goes up $6,720 in 6 months. So this is the proposal we got from them. Just I think this works and could achieve what we were looking at to approve today, or is there something else we were looking to do? We didn't get proposals or actively seek them out from other groups because we were first just trying to lock down this one, and since they had asked already directly. And I think I updated you all last time, but the United Way food distribution is set to go on its own. So we don't need to fund that because UCSB Dining is donating all the food every day of the week to them. So they are set. So this is the only other request that was out there. But definitely, if this works out, or if it doesn't, still want to see what else we can do to partner with other groups. But this is kind of a first stab at it.
Great. Thank you for that presentation, Jonathan. Any questions or comments from the board?
I just have a comment or a question. How does this integrate? Do the K-12 through schools do food distribution to the students during COVID?
They're doing their own kind of distribution system. It's not technically integrated with them, in the fact that they're getting their lunch and maybe breakfast. And again, I don't know the details of what's going on at this point, but this is more focused on like meals, like for the family to prepare.
Okay.
Good question, Bob. Any other questions or comments from the board? I see a hand from George.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think this looks great. And thank you for pulling this together. I think this is a great location for it. It's a great group that is really well positioned in the community. The only thing I would hope is that after we do this for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, we have an idea of who it is we served. And I realize that's sensitive because the ethnicity, I think, of the people we serve might be taken out of context, but I really would like to know who it is we're serving. And so if there's any way that at some point Leonore could do some kind of survey, even if it's kind of an anecdotal, informal survey, I think it would be valuable for us, particularly if we want to continue programs like this.
It's definitely something I work with her to do.
What's your feeling about that? I mean, is that something we can do with a certain amount of sensitivity, or do you think that's venturing into problem area?
Well, we didn't exactly do that when we were doing our community room events, but I think it's something a lot of grants kind of do already. So they might be already set up to track who they're serving. So they might have that.
I just have one more question. Do we know what the quality of the food is and the nutritional value and those kinds of things? Are we really focused on healthy foods and teaching? Part of serving meals or giving meals is sometimes teaching people how to cook or those kinds of things. My daughter's been involved with a bunch of companies that are pushing healthy foods out into schools, and it's a fairly tricky business because it's the parents who don't know how to eat healthy, and then so there's more in the programming of trying to get people to eat healthy and shop healthy, and so I don't know what kind of food they're serving or pushing.
Yeah, I mean, what Leonore told me is that produce is the most popular thing that they give out. Like, I think they had avocados last week, cheap from the food bank, and they went quick. So they're trying to get whole meals for people, and so it's rice, beans, produce is the kind of focus.
Okay.
But they're not doing like any educational stuff. I'm sure they would say if they wanted us for that, we'd pay more to help pay for education. Maybe that is something we want to do. But
yeah, Jonathan, thanks for bringing this back so quickly. I've seen them advertising on social media about the food distribution they do, and from what I've seen, it's been very health oriented. And I think that's a great point that you bring up, Bob. And just looking at this, I see the difference between the food order expense and the operating expense. And it mentions that perishables are free. Just curious, is that, are they sourcing food from the food bank, like for the perishables?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I think this is a great program.
Yeah, they're listed at the food bank too as the site to get food.
Good.
One question I have is with our food distribution partnership that we had with the United Way, what were we paying just for the food, or were we paying for the staff time too?
Well, we were paying for the staff time through Ivy Beautiful.
Okay, so that would be the difference between like that and a proposal like this.
Yeah. I mean, it was the AmeriCorps members who we had hired through Ivy Beautiful who were setting up, and now it's Christina who's doing it, who we're paying.
Okay, that makes sense. Director Friedman?
So it's what we were doing before. I mean, I was kind of under the impression that it was United Way was running an event and that we were providing assistance doing setup. Is that something that we have Isla Vista Beautiful do that for other kinds of events that might be utilizing our facilities, or was that something that we were specifically doing for the United Way process?
Wait, could you repeat your question? I didn't get what you
I was under the impression. I was under the impression, so I'd asked you explicitly about this at a meeting a while ago, with relation to our interaction with United Way and the work that was being done in the community center before, whether we were operating that event or whether it was something that an event that was being run by United Way that they were bringing to us, and that we were providing the facilities for it, and so this. I never caught that we were having people from Isla Vista Beautiful as opposed to, I remember at the time you had described that there was some time yourself letting people in, you were actually spending most of your time at the office during the event. So we have people from Isla Vista Beautiful kind of also working on setting up and working the event. Is this something that we provide to other types of events that would happen at their community center, or is this something we're specifically doing with United Way?
Well, the board voted to allocate the 1,400 when their food ran out, because they were doing food distribution on their own. We weren't funding it. We were just opening it up. And then they ran out of money and donations for food beginning of the summer. And then the board voted to allocate 1,400 to United Way to distribute that food. And then that ran out, but then they got the UCSB to take care of it.
My question right now is with relation to this, not the money that we would have been giving United Way for food, but I'm trying to get an understanding of the money that we're spending through the beautiful program for staff distribution of us distributing food. So I'm just trying to understand how all these pieces fit together.
It's different before September and after it. Before September, our Ivy Beautiful program had, the two AmeriCorps members, and part of their duties, it wasn't all they did, was to also show up at the coordinated entry, and sometimes Ivy Beautiful workers would be there. They would maybe be cleaning up or something. So that's how it was going out then. Now, Christina, who's working half-time, 20 hours a week, whereas the others were working way less, she organizes the coordinated entry to, the Wednesday, Friday as part of her time. And that was part of the contract discussions, was that we wanted to increase funding for outreach and do more. And so part of it was building that into the Ivy Beautiful of Christina's duties to set up Wednesday and Friday. So, but she hasn't, distributed the food we paid for, because that was July and August. So Christina's doing it through her time as Ivy Beautiful, with the help of the AmeriCorps members that would be doing it anyways. But Christina's she's the person on the ground there.
So the extent to which we're now potentially working with, is that we'd actually be working with the teen center on this? Like, would they be doing taking over in some sense what United Way was doing in the process, or was it?
It'd be just a totally separate thing.
This is a totally separate thing. Is that something that would still be happening at our community center? Would this be happening at the teen center building?
It'd be at the teen center, and Ross and I had the discussion on Friday on making that fit within our powers, and it's all good because it's a community facility district.
You can tell where I'm going with my next question to get an understanding. Yeah. So how does that fit?
It's our power and 61250s own, operate, manage community facilities, and this is a community facility that we are operating with this program.
This community facility being the concept of the teen center, like we would be operating the teen center under some kind of almost reverse contract with the teen center.
Yes, and that would be another thing is we would just have a facility use agreement with them. We're not, I'm not the one operating the program. Leonora is obviously, but that's the concept. It's an operation of a community facility to do this thing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and Jay, just to follow up on that, I think this also follows up on our previous contract with St. George Youth Center sponsoring a media program that their kids were doing. I think they were producing a video about Isla Vista or something like that. And for that, we also had the program created in line with operating a community facility.
Great. All right, great. Do other members of the board have any other questions? Well, I'll just say I think that this is a really great opportunity for us to support this community effort to try and make sure that our most vulnerable members of the community have access to food during what is a really difficult time for everyone. And I like the suggestions brought forward by Director Thurlow that we have some sort of a built into the grant, some sort of tracking so that we have an idea of not just who the program's serving, but the scale of how many folks we're able to serve. And maybe with that also thinking more broadly for if it gets brought back in the future, how we can better integrate it with other food assistance programs that exist. So those are all things that I think would be great to see in this grant proposal, and I really like the direction it's going. Any other members of the board want to speak? Father John.
I'm very supportive of this. I think it's an excellent connection with the community. Leonore is just, I mean, the whole team that has been involved in this is just excellent. I think it is a place we need to be.
They're excited about this. They were really pushing for it. And Leonora is sad she couldn't be here. She has family obligation, but she gives her thanks for consideration.
Any other comments from members of the board? All right, well then, if not, I would entertain a motion.
So move approval of this agenda item.
I will second.
Motion made by Thurlow. It's been seconded by Freeman.
Real quick, so the agenda item did leave it open-ended in terms of how many months. So if you could just specify the number of months.
What's your recommendation?
I think 6 is what 6 is what they asked for.
Okay, I'll move that we fund this program for 6 months, beginning on.
We can say just November 1st.
Beginning on November 1st.
That's friendly.
I just have what if we do it through the end of the fiscal year?
So
let's add 2 more months so that.
Yeah. Let me just give you the price for that. It's $89.60. So.
I'll consider that a friendly amendment.
Also friendly.
All right, so we have a motion on the table, and now I'm going to open up public comment. Any members of the public want to speak on this item?
I would like to.
Oh, I'm seeing Rodney. Go ahead, Rodney.
Hi, I just, I think it's great also. I just had a couple of questions. Like, how is this distribution advertised? And like, who do they target? And is it available to the entire community, students, everybody included?
Jonathan, you want to answer that?
Yeah, it's everybody is allowed to access this, and the first main way it's promoted, it's on the food bank website, the Santa Barbara Food Bank. So people in general looking for services of food, it'll be highlighted. I know Leonore does a good job on social media promoting it, and she has, the networks with the families, so it gets out there. And when I visited it, not pretty long time ago, it was a pretty diverse crowd. Even some of the houseless community was there too.
Okay, thanks. And it's just one day a week, correct?
Yeah, it's Tuesdays 10 to 12.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Rodney. Any other comments from members of the public? All right, and then with that, I'll bring it back to the board. I see a hand from Ethan.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick point and question. I know that UCSB students oftentimes have access to on-campus programs such as the AS Food Bank, but that got me to think about Santa Barbara City College students. And I know that over the past couple of years, SBCC has created a lot of awesome new programs to help meet the nutritional needs of students on campus. But I know that with campus being closed, there may be some interruption in service. And I'm wondering if Jonathan, if you have any information on that, just because I think this will also be amazing for Santa Barbara City College students who live in Isla Vista.
Yeah, I mean, we can get it promoted there too, but there hasn't been interruption of service of the City College Food Pantry.
Oh, good to know, good to know.
Great. Well, one thing I was going to ask, can we bake into the motion that we have some sort of a grant report on the conclusion of the grant that includes information that we spoke about in terms of scale of numbers of people served, who those people are, other common metrics?
Yeah, I'll consider that a friendly amendment.
Would we want that report like maybe before the next year's budget cycle, like 6 months into the program, so we can make if we're going to do it next year, we have information to make a budget decision?
I'm envisioning it being similar to the way that Jonathan brings back reports from our contracts in a program review before we actually approve the contract for the next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
So maybe that's the language we're looking for the motion, is a program review.
Yeah, I stuck with the 6 months, which makes sense. So program review, it's 6 months to detail demographics and scale.
Excellent. Okay, can you read the final motion back?
Yeah, motion to approve this proposal and allocate $8,960 through the end of the fiscal year with a program review at 6 months to detail demographics and scale of the program.
All right. Any last comments from the board? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Great. Director Brent,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Hedges,
Yes.
Thurlow,
Yes.
Geis,
Yes.
Nguyen.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Very excited about that. Next, we're going to go to item 4.2, which is Racial Justice and Public Safety Work Group Update. So this is our calendar of items, and we have 2 of those items on our agenda today. But this is an opportunity for members of the board to mention other items they would like added to the calendar for the future.
Yeah, especially with 2 meetings left this year, good to think about what we want to do now and what we want to do later.
Any requests from members of the board? Okay, then with that, I think we can close this item and we can revisit it if we have other things we'd like after we go through our next 2 items. So the next item is 4.3, unarmed response to community issues. And this I know is a item that has been anticipated by many, myself included, to review some of the new strategies that other jurisdictions are using for unarmed responses. So Jonathan, I'll hand it over to you to give us the report.
Great. So there's not complicated report for this. It's just an initial information item. But what I was able to get an actual good document of explaining a program was for Cahoots, which I think is the oldest of this kind. I know San Francisco just started theirs this month, but there was nothing online that was easily accessible to attach, so we can learn more about theirs. So it's just the Cahoots one that's attached here, and that's the national model of non-law enforcement emergency first responders responding to people in crisis or welfare checks. Another option that I also didn't attach, but I know just because of, I don't think it's a public document, but I know that it's been discussed already in our county to do something like this. But that didn't move forward with the potential proposal from the Guardian team. So that's another thing to just think about, is that was somewhere that was in the works. It didn't play out, but yeah, the Cahoots was the best proposal for this that I could find for us to discuss and see how we'd want to move to something here. But just wanted to emphasize the Guardians one, that there has been a discussion happening here already on something similar that didn't play out, but could still in the future in another way.
Great. Thank you for that, Jonathan. And thank you for providing the Cahoots information guide. I would say that this program, I think we're starting to see that it really is a model for the entire nation that has gained in much more prominence following the protests of this summer. However, I think that it is a seasoned program with over 31 years of experience that has been going on long before those events. And I was made aware earlier last week that I think that there are similar discussions being had elsewhere in Santa Barbara County, perhaps in the city of Lompoc with their police department, about the potential for something that would utilize this model, because at its core, it really is utilizing trained crisis intervention workers who are trained in behavioral health, as well as emergency medical technicians, to try and intervene in a way that keeps people safe. And I am definitely very curious to hear, I guess, if there, first, what already exists in Santa Barbara County that is similar to this. I know that we, at times, have the crisis intervention team that pairs our behavioral wellness staff with a sheriff's deputy. But I would definitely be really curious if there are other examples of that that could be built on, as well as ways that we could potentially form this to better fit our community here in Isla Vista. Specifically, one thing that I think our board has spoken about in the past is this idea of using alcohol and drug counselors to be the ones making some of these alcohol and drug incident related contacts when it comes to Friday and Saturday nights and people out and about. Because I think what we see right now is that the strategy seems really focused on enforcement and not necessarily very focused on the rehabilitation or the behavioral health aspect of things. So just some food for thought to think about, but I'll open the floor for other directors that want to speak as well.
I read their proposal. I think the cahoots thing, the counties, had smaller versions of trying something like that, but it never had where, it's modeled around an unarmed response. And so you're really changing some of the services, even how they dispatch the calls. The dispatching is being done by the local government there. I think the sheriff's department, and they're dispatching those calls. And so you'd really have to make sure we have the buy-in of the police groups and the mental health system and all the other components to that. EMS is not an easy contract to mess with. But the one thing I saw is that original organization was a federally qualified health center. So it seems to me that maybe they're tapping some federal dollars to pay for this model. So it might be interesting to give that group a call and see how they're funded, because that might be the trick to doing this. If there was more federal or state money into this system, we might have a better chance of bringing about this additional service. It's just a thought on my part. So,
thank you for that, Bob. Any other comments from directors?
Hey, this is Ethan. I think there's a number of great comments. Bob, I appreciate what you just brought up. And one thing I'll mention just on the topic of alternative response, separate from the Cahoots program, is some other ideas that we've previously discussed and ideas that were discussed during the formation process of the Community Services District. One includes the Student Neighborhood Assistance Program, by which unarmed community service officer type personnel respond to calls about quality of life issues such as music playing too loud or vandalism or taking minor reports, conducting parking enforcement. That's one previous topic that's come up in conversation with our district. And I think that that's also something for us to keep in mind. And I think that's also related to what we discussed a couple weeks ago when reviewing the low-level enforcement actions that take up a lot of resources in Isla Vista, a lot of focus on responding to issues of personal alcohol use or different things related to alcohol consumption in public. I think that's also some low-hanging fruit for a different type of response. So I'm glad that we're looking at the Cahoots program, and I think that there are other programs for us to look at as well when considering some of the largest issues in Isla Vista. So thanks for bringing this forward, Jonathan.
Thank you for that, Ethan. I'll go to Dr. Freeman.
Are we looking at the Cahoots program as something that the Isla Vista Community Service District would run, or are we looking at this as something that we're going to request that the county or the university use? Or I guess I'm trying to understand. The agenda item included, I don't know if you'd call it a media guide from Eugene, Oregon, but I'm not certain what the, like, if there was even a more specific intention on how it would integrate with our strategies. Or
yeah, I think I didn't mention this when I spoke, and I should have mentioned this last bit, but since this is just our calendar of topics to discuss, we're first trying to gauge, is the board interested in this before we spend more time developing anything or doing more research. So it's more, where are we at on this general topic, and then I can know, do we prioritize how we spend our time to move forward.
Hey, Jay, the way I read that Cahoots program, that whole Cahoots program would have to be, I mean, we could be a sponsor and an encourager, but it looks like to me that those are all county programs.
Yeah, no,
and they have all the authority, but it's not that it's not a good idea that could come from us, and especially if we did a little research and there was federal money behind it, and so might be something that the county would look at. You can't help but read it and not think it's a good idea.
Yeah, it's actually, there's the city of Berkeley we're working on a set of bills they called Safety for All. And one of the things that they specifically were looking at was Cahoots. And one of the things that they noted was that it seemed to save $10 to $20 million in the police department at Eugene, as the calculations as would apply to Berkeley. And so the premise being like, where would funding come from? And in some sense, if this is something that we rolled out by, for example, like the county, it's something that maybe would just save the county money. So.
I was a little skeptical on the savings figures. Like, did it include the cost of dispatch that would be related to this program, or did that stay on the side of the ledger? So,
I think
I didn't see this. Jay or Bob, can you help me here? I see lots and lots and lots of graphs about the savings. What was the cost of this program? Annual cost?
So I, not from the data that was there, but it was $2.1 million.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think, just to add a comment or two, I think this is a really interesting program. I think we should pursue it. I think that early on, we need to get the other partners involved in the discussions. And like so many other things, just having the discussion and bringing this up may begin to move certain, certain of our partners in the right direction. And a $2 million grant, that might be an interesting thing for somebody to pursue.
Yeah, thank you for that, George. I would also just say that although I want to echo, I think, the comments that Ethan was making earlier, that although it's not necessarily covered in Cahoots as it relates to what happened in Eugene, Oregon, the model that's there of an intervention that's done by non-sworn public safety employees that are focused on people's health, whether it's from a behavioral or mental health aspect, or it's alcohol and drug related. I think figuring out ways where we can potentially plug those types of workers in to solve problems that exist in Isla Vista would be a really interesting study to conduct with our safety partners. Just because I know when I am out there on a Friday and Saturday night, I do see that seems to be the largest issue in terms of just time that law enforcement is focused on, is that enforcement of those alcohol related crimes. And usually those are open containers and MIPs. And is there a way that maybe we can try and plug in sort of a non-sworn disciplinary model instead to those interactions? Or maybe as it relates to neighborhood concerns, things like noise complaints or other disagreements between neighbors. I think that this really ties into what we're seeing here with the Cahoots model, even though it's more focused on like human services and behavioral health.
Also, some low-hanging fruit on this topic, something easy to get the ball rolling on, maybe us agendizing UCIV and the AS Public Safety Commission to come meet with us in the near future. UCIV was an amazing program when it was up and running a few years ago. And while it wasn't dispatched through the public safety dispatch system, community members were walking around and observing issues related to noise or other quality of life issues, and proactively walking up to either the home or the location of the issue and handling it on a peer-to-peer level before law enforcement intervened. And the goal of the program also was to act as kind of a mediator between law enforcement and community members in some of those issues that could be resolved better outside of law enforcement intervention. And I think that if we were able to work with Public Safety Commission and the UCIV team to get that up and running again, that would also be an amazing benefit to the community.
Ethan, I echo your point as a UCIV volunteer myself. It was really, I think one of the things was striking to me was the amount you could see when 5 o'clock rolled around and volunteers were out there, making sure that due to the festival ordinance, everyone knew that they needed to turn off their music so that they could avoid that large fine. That was just such a great peer-to-peer intervention to make sure that people were informed and knew how to protect themselves against those fines.
Okay, so I'll move that we direct staff to continue to explore this possibility, and also perhaps to begin discussions with our partners in the mental health community as well as law enforcement.
I will second.
All right, there's been a motion made by Thurlow, seconded by Freeman. Is there any public comment?
If I can,
Schroeder, I'll just briefly, if I could.
Sure, go ahead, Deputy Schroeder.
Hey, I just wanted you guys to kind of be aware of maybe an issue that hasn't been thought of. The program does sound like a great idea. I haven't reviewed it in depth, but we certainly would be on board with exploring that more. I just wanted to kind of touch briefly on a lot that law enforcement spends a lot of time on the alcohol citations and music violations and such. And certainly by the stats that we went through previously, it is true, it appears that way. However, if you had a separate agency responding to those calls, you likely would still need just about as many sheriff's deputies because primarily we're there to enforce things like the people shooting last weekend, or the man with a rifle, or the domestic violence call, or the drunk driver, or the physical altercation. That's primarily what we're out there for. However, in our free time, when there's not that kind of call, we're enforcing the smaller stuff. And so it's very routine that we'll be writing an alcohol citation and we'll break away to go handle a more important call. So instead of a model where we're kind of sitting in the station like a fireman responding to calls, we're out in the field. So even if you had separate agencies to handle those minor calls, you're still going to have just about as many sheriff's deputies sitting somewhere ready to handle the emergency.
Great. Thank you for that comment, Justin. I see a hand, Director Bertrand.
Thank you. Deputy Schroeder, I appreciate that point. And while there certainly is community concern, not only locally, but nationally about where public dollars go as far as investing in public safety, I think when I'm looking at this issue in terms of Isla Vista, what I'm most concerned about is how do we appropriately respond to these issues. And oftentimes when someone's stopped for a minor alcohol violation and is approached by armed law enforcement officers, that can certainly be a negative interaction, and that can be something that's quite uncomfortable for the people who are being cited, and perhaps as well for the law enforcement officer. When we have a similar enforcement action for a noise issue and armed deputies or law enforcement officers come to that noise issue, that also can be something that's very uncomfortable. That can be something that produces fear, and that ultimately gets in the way and reduces trust between community and law enforcement. So the issue that you bring up about the overall funding and staffing of law enforcement, that's certainly something that's important. But even more than that, I'm thinking about just the interactions that our community members have with law enforcement to promote better relationships and to have an appropriate response to those minor issues.
Agreed. Thank you, Ethan. I think you have a great point. I just wanted to make note that instead of those 4 law enforcement officers standing on the corner of Del Playa and Del Sur, they'll be sitting in the station spending the same amount of money on them. And so overall, I don't see a large cost savings here, but I do see the benefit that you just described.
Got it.
Spencer?
Yes, I see a comment from Rodney. Go ahead, Rodney.
I just wanted to address Ethan, the use of Public Safety Commission, UCIV. I'm actually the advisor to those 2 programs. And as of right now, there's been a mandate from administration that they do not get deployed during the COVID, during these COVID times. They just don't feel like it's safe. And I also think that when the time does come when they can be deployed, they will also, I think in terms of safety, would still require having, they would definitely could be the first interaction with the students or the residents, but they would want to have law enforcement at a stone's throw in case anything happened for safety purposes as well. But they could definitely be a buffer, and we did see that work with UCIV in the past on big holiday weekends and things like that. There was also discussion of deploying UCIV for the first 5 weeks at the beginning of each quarter, or 3, first not at the summer and fall quarters. So that way, because that's when law enforcement does most of their, I would say, education through citation efforts. And so it'd be really good to have them deployed in those time periods to warn students about what is going on.
Thank you for that, Rodney.
This is Dave from UCPD. I agree with a lot what's been said. I've worked in campus and IV for nearly 20 years. I've seen a few things. I think something or some program that we can come up with that gives us more tools to collaborate and come together is going to be beneficial. I think across the nation, what we see with many instances is no police agency is going to arrest or cite themselves out of issues. So I think as much resources that we can gather to have help us and help educate folks and have some intervention of some sort is going to be helpful across the board. I don't know where the savings would be, but I think at some point there would be some form of savings somewhere. But it's challenging, and law enforcement, unfortunately, it's not the answer for everything, but sometimes collaboration with a program or the right folks can be the answer to start moving in the right direction.
Thank you for that, Lieutenant Millard. Are there any other comments from members of the public? All right, well, I'll bring it back to the board then. I think the motion is to have staff continue to research this, but Jonathan, can you read back what the motion is?
Yes, what I have is motion to direct staff to continue to explore this concept and begin discussions with partners in mental health and law enforcement agencies.
All right. Any other comments from members of the board? I see Director Freeman.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate Justin's comment on relation to time. I'd asked at the meeting on data about whether the arrests were taking a large amount of time, or what like the distribution of arrest timing was. But I think what's something to note, which we actually might want to, as a board, think about going back and trying to get different get a different kind of data for, is that the description in the Cahoots documentation is largely about redirection of 911 and other forms of service calls. And so we had been previously concentrating largely on the arrests, whereas the question of how many 911 calls are coming to the police and then are being dispatched that aren't necessarily leading to anything like that, that might be interesting for this.
Yeah, we can add that to our list of topics, is 911 calls for service data.
Father John?
Yeah, I had at first kind of an inappropriate thing to say that there really isn't a silver bullet in this, and you know, we tend to look for sort of a unified theory that's going to fix things. You know, what this is the program, this is the model that appears to be rising to the top. And I think what we have here really is a multiplicity of things that have been tried around the nation. For myself, after 2 decades of being involved in some of these things, back to restorative policing and so forth, and the crisis intervention team model, especially the basic Memphis model, is a great way to respond to particularly a call that has a mental health component to it. Because what you have there in that is sort of a 3-legged stool. You have law enforcement, mental health services, and NAMI involvement, you know, the National Alliance, the advocate folks. And, you know, when those things are kind of all in balance and collaboration, then there is a possibility of that mental health call not being a problem. And but when you just immediately dispatch a number of armed deputies or officers to a scene, some of them may have the training, some of them may not. We've got partners here in town that have been kind of all over this here again for decades, that we really ought to examine some of the research that has already been done and make sure that that's factored in. I'm not proposing anything as one that's floated to the top, even for me. I don't have a particular favorite. We just want it to work. We want people's lives to get saved in the moment. We want there to be peace. And so this is a very thoughtful exercise. You know, I just have some research data on it myself, particularly on the Memphis model crisis intervention team. Some stuff that came out of the University of Chicago from a researcher who is a friend of mine from some years back ago, about what worked and what didn't when law enforcement got called to scene. And anyway, I'd love to be a part of the discussion on this a little further.
Great, thank you for that, Father John. If there are no other board comments, then I think we can take it to a roll call vote.
Cool. Director Brandt?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Hedges?
Yes.
Thurlow?
Yes.
Dice?
Yes.
Nguyen?
All right, motion passes. With that, we're going to move to item 4.4, which is the use of force policies. And we've got a couple of attachments here. So I'll hand it over to Jonathan to explain what we're looking at.
Yes, so just want to thank our law enforcement agencies for both having their policies easy to find and access on their websites. So it really only took me 5 minutes to put this together. What you have on here are both the UCPD and the SB Sheriff's Office policy manuals. Use of force, I think, is actually number 300 in both, or it's 800 in the UC, it's 300 in the Sheriff. And then what you have is on June 23rd, the policy change that the Sheriff put out as another attachment. And then another one is an amendment to the UC one on crowd management, intervention control, which is not exactly use of force, but kind of is related to use of force incidents at University of California in fall of 2012, like the Davis pepper spray. So that's where that came out of. Both what you have is the most up to date that both agencies are using, but I need to note, like Lieutenant Millard said last meeting, is the UC one is under revision right now. So they've got their UC committee looking at all of their police policies, especially use of force. So that's not maybe what they're going to be using in the future, but this is what they're operating under right now.
Thanks, Jonathan. You know, before we have this discussion, I did want to clarify something about the UC document, because it looks like the document sort of references a policy, and it says each campus shall adopt a use of force policy. So is this the actual policy itself, or is this just a UC-wide policy manual that's referencing this other sub-policy?
I maybe if Lieutenant Millard could answer it, because when I was putting this together, I confirmed with him that this is the document to use.
Yes. Yes. So the University of California has a system-wide policy for use of force, and then individual campuses are incorporated into that, their campus use of force policy. As of right now, we are revising our entire policy for UCSB, and with that, it is in collaboration with the university system and the other campuses to make sure that there's no big variances or discrepancies within our use of force policies and our crowd control policy. The crowd control policy is, I believe it's still being worked on. They sent out a draft, but as time goes on, things change and new issues come up as far as maybe law changes or procedural changes. So sometimes within the UC system, this can take time, but the thought behind that is they want to make sure they get it right, and we all want to make sure we get it right. So there's quite a bit of review that is going on as far as what the policies say and what the documentation looks like, and how that documentation can potentially become part of the transparent model that we have. So it is in flux. I'm going to email you in a second, Jonathan, of something else that I found, but our new department policy should be coming out, I'm hoping within the next month or so, maybe a month and a half, and that'll be posted on the website for everyone to look. And I'll be sure to let everyone know that you can go to the website and look at it and download it or whatever you may need to do with it. But I'm going to email you in a second, Jonathan, of a newer UC1 system-wide use of force policy.
Okay, thank you.
So here's what I'm thinking. I want to make sure that we have the discussion after we've all had the time to absorb all the documents. And if there's a new document out there that's either forthcoming very soon, or I guess this new one that's being emailed, maybe we would want to revisit this when we have all of that.
Works for me. Do that. Kick this item.
Okay, great. Thank you to UCPD and the Sheriff's Office for helping gather this information so that we can talk about it. We appreciate your help with that. Okay, so we're going to move to item 4.5, which is the district COVID response.
Hey, I just want to interrupt. I said yes for the last motion, but I was muted. So I'm sorry. It was a yes for the last motion. Sorry about that.
No worries. Jonathan, can you make sure that's recorded?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. So next item is 4.5, the district COVID-19 response.
Cool. So just a couple things that have happened since the last meeting. Our door hangers have gone out to 37 households in Isla Vista. One side, again, promoting the event on Friday. The other side, promoting the COVID safety tips and resources that we put together in partnership with every group imaginable working on this right now in Isla Vista. So all the residents in town should have that. And then the follow-up canvassing is happening now, of course, with safe protocols and distancing. The event that's happening on Friday is part of our COVID response, the virtually Lucid in Isla Vista Halloween at Home event. That's squared away and ready to go. And the promotion has been out there. We're, one thing I learned today at the Halloween planning call is that the calls for service and just have been going down in terms of, and the reports on the forms of COVID response. So it was good that we got those out there, but hopefully our messaging was sticking for the weekend. All our door hangers came out ahead of the weekend, and there was a significant dip in the numbers, almost by half, it sounded like, of calls for service for parties going on. So, and the sizes seem to be shrinking too. So this is what we heard today from the county and UCSB and IV Foot Patrol, who are the three areas that you can submit reports to. So that's good news that our messaging is, and others who are doing messaging, it's being effective. The safety stations program, happy to report, we are ready to launch on the 30th, is what Lieutenant Millard let me know, and we will be getting them masks so that they can be assisting with mask distribution as well. And that's about it that's going on in the last 2 weeks on the district's COVID response.
Thank you for that report, Jonathan. I know I got my door hanger right here, and great work to you and everyone that's a part of the team in the collaboration with UC Santa Barbara, the county, and others to put this together. And I'm really excited for Lucidity's Halloween at Home program. I think I saw that it got some positive press recently, and that we've had a little over 1,000 people registered so far, which is really great news. And I'm really hoping will bode well for our efforts to keep people safe and healthy and inside at home during the Halloween weekend. So thanks for all your efforts on that front. Any questions or comments from board members?
Yeah, Spencer, I'll just point out that we continue to see cases rising in IV. Every day when the test results come back, Isla Vista has been higher than what we saw throughout most of the pandemic. And it is very concerning to see more of our neighbors getting sick. And those are only the folks who are getting tested. We know that there are more people who are asymptomatic and have the virus in our communities. So it's just so important that we continue these efforts. From what I saw this past weekend, there was a lot less people out, which is definitely a good thing to see. And so many people are doing the right thing. But I hope that our neighbors are paying attention to the increasing amount of COVID-19 cases and acting accordingly, because we can really stop the spread in Isla Vista. We're a small enough community where we can get something done if our neighbors buy into it. So I'm glad we're continuing these efforts.
Jonathan, do you want to give a little bit of the update? Have our outreach folks with the Lucidity Halloween at Home program, have they been able to conduct any outreach that you can report on as far as COVID safety goes?
Yeah, it's a part of their general outreach. So they did most outreach in the last week and a half when they first started to groups in Isla Vista to encourage them to either participate in the festival or to get their members to participate in it. But they're doing like the canvassing now, and that's partly recruiting them to the event and partly informing them about the safe practices. So they're using the door hanger to go, and that's their thing to point to people.
Great. Thank you for that update. Any other comments from board members? All right, then with that, again, good work to Lucidity and you all for your efforts. And I'm really looking forward to seeing a positive Halloween weekend coming this weekend. I'm optimistic. I think I've seen the same thing that Ethan has, that it seems like gatherings over the last week, possibly due to the highly publicized cases of COVID-19 that did get reported on. I think those gatherings have been diminishing. So let's hope we can keep that momentum up, because we need to in order to stop the spread of the virus.
Yeah, and one last thing that could also be contributing, I can't believe we forgot to mention it, which is the county last Tuesday also voted to enact an ordinance, which is not in effect yet, but I don't think that's widely known. But the ordinance is a fine system on people who host illegal gatherings under the health order. So I think Spencer and I spoke at that hearing with many other Isla Vista residents, and I think that's also helping contribute to the messaging that there's a consequence now, even though people might not know it's not fully in effect yet.
Do you know when this will be fully in effect?
Yeah, I have to grab that exact date. I actually don't know the exact date off the top of my head.
Yeah, and my understanding is how the enforcement of it is done is still also a very up in the air thing.
November 10th. Thank you, Louisa. So, but yes, the enforcement, I don't think we have a clear answer yet on that, but I think the word is out there, which I think is being effective.
Okay, great.
Any other comments from board members?
Yeah, I'll just mention that while the board did vote on the administrative fines, just to be clear for all community members who may be listening, these gatherings have been unlawful since the spring under the public health officer order locally and also from the state's health orders. This definitely clarifies potential enforcement actions, but just to be sure, all gatherings have been prohibited and will be prohibited even before this action you're describing is completed.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. Okay, well, thanks for the report. And I think now we're going to move to item 4.6, which is Resolution 20-13 to consider Public Records Act requests policy.
Great. So this is a simple one. We already have to respond to Public Records Act requests. We don't have a set system to do so, but we operate under the state law for how we respond. So Ross, since we've had a few come in recently, Ross was kind enough to put this together for us as a best practice policy that we could use as a local process for responding to these requests, which have been a little more frequent lately. So this is just a way for us to have a clear message also to the public of what is done, because while someone can look up the Public Records Act on their own, that is a little more work. So we can have a local version on our website that people can engage with local messaging, and they can just be better, make better requests. We want to be able to get clear requests from the public, and them to have a clear expectation of what we're going to do when we get the requests. And so that's what this policy does.
Thank you, Jonathan. Ross, would you have anything to add? Can you speak to, is this sort of just adopting what the law is? Does this go above and beyond what the state law is in terms of transparency and compliance?
Sure. The Public Records Act allows local agencies to adopt additional policies, as Jonathan said. The local government cannot abrogate or reduce the level of access that's provided by state law. So what this does is it provides a clearer process and like Jonathan said, setting expectations for what the public can expect and what the process and the procedure is going to be for requests that are submitted to this specific district without having to go and look up the Public Records Act in the government code itself. The focus of this policy is really to let requesters know who they should be communicating with, who can they expect their communications from the district to be coming from, to set up a point of contact, because under the Public Records Act, local governments have in order to provide the level of access and transparency that the Public Records Act demands, it allows local governments to establish these processes to fulfill that purpose. So having a designated person that people know that they should be submitting to so that they can be processed as quickly as possible, and knowing who they should be communicating with in terms of clarifying, asking questions, because a local government has a duty to assist a requester in understanding and clarifying their request to promote access. So if you don't have a designated person, that actually can be compromised, because you may get different people, you may get a delay if it's their request is submitted to someone else who's not in charge of it. It really helps. The goal is to streamline it, to promote access, to promote transparency, and to provide some predictability in being able to respond to these requests. And it's not out of the ordinary for these types of policies to be adopted. This district hasn't had one because it had not been in existence long enough, and it really hadn't had enough records kind of accumulate over time to really warrant something. But now the district's getting older, it's growing up, it has more documents, and the public is interested in how its government is operating, and it has an obligation to assist people in their requests. And that's what this resolution and policy seeks to do.
Thank you for that explanation, Ross. All right, any questions or comments from board members? We'll go to Director Thurlow.
Yeah, Ross, I really appreciate the fact that we have this. As somebody who was on the other side of the counter on many times, I appreciate the fact that you've laid this all out, and it's great. A couple questions. One is, there's a reference in here to fees. Fees have always been the way that public agencies thwart the Public Records Act, by charging exorbitant fees for searches or for copying or for whatever. I noticed you refer to the district's fee schedule. Do we have a fee schedule?
Currently, no. So you got a couple of issues in your question, Director Thurlow. And first off, one, we don't have a fee schedule. That is a placeholder language for when Jonathan goes out and has a fee fee study conducted. Right now, there aren't a lot of fees that need to be paid because we're not offering permits or licenses or any of the other types of responding to types of requests that require some type of a reimbursement. The Public Records Act and the interpreting case law does not allow for a public agency to charge for searching. It cannot charge for consulting with legal counsel. It cannot charge for most of the cost that is borne by the agency in actually responding. What it can do is it can charge for copies if hard copies are requested. If electronic copies are requested, then there can't be a copying charge that's associated with that. And the only real exception to not being able to charge for searching or assisting in searching is if the requested information requires the compilation of specific software. It doesn't happen very often. I don't anticipate it's something that's going to be happening with this district anytime soon. But for example, if IVCSD had a proprietary system for the keeping of certain information, and in order to export that into a human readable format, some type of software development needed to be done, that would be a charge that could be worked out. In most cases, most public agencies conduct a fee study in order to set a schedule of fees. Currently, as I mentioned, IVCSD doesn't really have enough to do that. So for right now, it is a placeholder language, but from a practical standpoint, we're looking at what the city of Goleta does. And right now for hard copies, they do 50 cents for the first, I think $1 for the first page or 25 cents for the second page or something along those lines. But the majority of the responses that come in now are usually electronic. And since the majority of this district's documents are kept in electronic form, there really isn't a high risk of fees being something that keeps people from requesting documents on what their government is doing.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Second question, real quick. Is a Public Records Act request a public record?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And so we, Jonathan, we keep those public records in a certain place where if somebody came in and said, I want to see all the Public Records Act requests to the district, you would have those available for public inspection?
The records do exist and we have them.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
That's actually a fairly common question that newspaper agencies, newspaper corporations will do is they'll send a Public Records Act request to all local government agencies in a certain area and simply ask them for, we want a record of all of the requests that have been made to you. And it's kind of a, it's the press being the press and being a watchdog on how government is responding. So that's certainly a very typical request that we field across the different agencies that we represent.
Yeah, and just for everyone to know, in the last year, there's been two people who've made requests. One has made a couple. So I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. The other group made only one request. So it hasn't been a huge number, but we do have a record. I think there was one that happened before I was general manager. I don't think I have that record in my email or in our Google Docs, but we do have that in our office as a paper record.
Director Freeman.
One thing I had noticed is that particularly from the wording that Ross had used about people knowing who to contact and then send their requests to, and then where requests were coming from. It seemed like, verify I understand this correctly, requests are supposed to go to our assistant general manager, but responses will come from our general manager, or did I misunderstand that?
No, and that's intentional. That's intentional so that the assistant general manager can go through the process of communicating back and forth with the requester if necessary, coordinating the searching of records, finding out what's responsive, contacting our office to see if any records are exempt, and then having the general manager be the one who issues the formal decision, the formal response on the request. In the same way that Jonathan fulfills the position of the secretary, it kind of makes the response a little bit more formal, and it has the imprimatur of the general manager's signature.
All right, thank you so much.
Any other questions from board members?
I'll move approval of resolution 2013 for to implement a policy for Public Records Act requests.
Second.
Motion made by Thurlow and seconded by Geis. With that, we'll open up the public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Thank you, Ross and Jonathan, for putting this together. I think it's a no-brainer. This is good government at work, and I'm glad that we can make that clear, or make a policy that makes the process very clear for members of the public. Any other comments from the board? All right, and with that, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brent,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Hedges,
Yes.
Thurlow,
Yes.
Geis,
Yes.
Nguyen.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. So with that, we've reached the end of our action items, and we're going to go to reports. First, reports from members of the board. Any board members have reports? I see Director Thurlow, and then I'll go to Director Freeman.
Yeah, I just want to compliment Director Geis on the fact that he's allowed me to watch the World Series on the reflection off of his picture frame. Thanks, Bob.
What's the score?
1-0, Tampa Bay.
I love it.
Thank you, Director Thurlow. Director Freeman.
So I just wanted to say is that the Local Agency Information Commission is, my understanding, actually going to, at the next meeting, have the discussion of the Isla Vista Community Service District Municipal Service Review. This is something that got essentially strangely punted from the agenda last time. I think the discussion between the chair and the staff. The agenda has not come out yet. It will come out very soon, but I did talk with Bill Dillon, who is the both the legal counsel and has until very recently been acting as the interim general manager for the, actually we call him the interim chief executive officer of LAFCO, and to verify that there are no surprises as far as I know they're going to be on this agenda. The staff recommendation will continue to be for the negotiated 5-year delay as discussed. That said, I do have at least some concern that during the discussion there might be some curveballs thrown at us, because that was a staff recommendation and it is not something that has necessarily been vetted by the board at all. And so it might be nice if there's anyone who would be interested in being at that meeting in order to defend the district. And I also have some reason to believe that there will be some interactions with the Public Records Act requests that have been coming to the district and the LAFCO meeting. So, yeah.
Thank you, Director Freeman. I'm certainly happy to be there, and I think we can make sure that Jonathan, that you're on as well.
Yeah, of course.
Director Hedges.
Yes, I just wanted to state that I was asked this week by the 3rd District to be on the Isla Vista encampment work group regarding homeless issues, and I've agreed to do that.
Thank you for that, Father John. Looking forward to having your voice and your experience in that work group. I think that it will be very valuable. I know, I guess the only thing that I would report is I think that we heard that while we mentioned at our last meeting that the county had intended to use the community center for a homeless shelter, that may be changing, and it seems like things are kind of up in the air. So I don't know if I really have anything else to share other than continuing to talk with the supervisor's office and county community services department. And Jonathan and I had the opportunity to meet with Good Samaritan, which would be the operator of any site, and just learn more about what services they provide in terms of behavioral health and the coordinated entry system, which was a really positive thing, and expressed, I think, some of the concerns that we've heard from the community about the site, but also with mine towards wanting to be, a partner to try and figure out how we can better serve our homeless neighbors and keep everyone safe that is currently living in the parks right now. So with that, we'll go to reports from committees. Do we have any committee reports? I don't think we do. We'll go to report from District Council.
Thank you, President Brandt. Just a quick report that Jonathan asked me to put together a memo about a couple of bills that were recently enacted and signed by the governor that impact special districts and their employees. So we have completed that, and we'll be providing that to Jonathan, and I'll just kind of go over the highlights in my next report to the board for the first meeting in November. One of them does not apply since the district's powers do not include the relevant service areas, but one of the bills does, and so I'll just briefly go over some of the potential impacts. Nothing major, but just to provide an update to keep the board apprised of these new laws as they've come out. We got a report from the Special Districts Association, so your membership fee is going to good use, and they're providing those highlights. We're condensing that down on something that's a little bit more readable, a little bit easier to understand, and then just going through the quick analysis on the bill that actually applies. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that, Ross. Next, report from General Manager.
Cool. We got great news. Right before the board meeting, I got a call from the Air Resources Board of State of California to let us know we got the full award for the STEP grant of $170,000. So we are gonna be getting the paperwork to execute, and I think we'll need to vote at the next meeting to finalize. But we did win the full grant, and it was a very, very competitive process from what we saw. But we came out with almost the max award someone can get. So that's something to be really proud of. As our district, it's something we're gonna deal with in the next fiscal year. Nothing, the money wouldn't come in this year, but it's something great to look forward to next year. The Halloween at Home event, like I said, the door hangers have been delivered. The outreach has been going really strong. The lineup of the bands and DJs and performances was released yesterday. So it's on the district's Instagram and Lucidity's Instagram, and will continue to get pushed out. But the lineup's finalized of the acts and performances, and Jonah, Haas, and I have been fielding lots of different inquiries from the press. And so there's been a lot of media about our event. So we're looking forward to a good Friday night. It's looking exciting. I mean, I've looked at some of the content already that's going in. So it's I think we're gonna have a great product in our hands, a great first try at something like this. So, and lots of coordination happening with UCSB and City College and other groups who are doing events. So we're gonna have hopefully a safe weekend here. We've done our part, I think, to make that happen. The census is over. and we've been officially reimbursed for our work on that by the county, but that whole process is now done with. We will hopefully get the information as soon as we can, sometime next year. But we didn't get the final word of how Isla Vista did respond. So hoping to get that eventually, but that process is now over. Compost Collective, I don't know if I mentioned this in the past, but I will mention it again just so make sure you know, but we hired 2 new employees to replace people who've lost, and they've now both have started. So we've got our full team on board for the compost, and I wasn't able to make it to the Ivy Rec and Park District meeting last Thursday since I was sick, but Sienna was there and she presented on the compost pile, and it was a great reception. So now we're clear to start moving forward on more plans on that. So, excuse me. The mediation program, we've got the roommate COVID-19 compact is officially live and launched on our website. So please do your part in terms of knowing anybody who could benefit from that and sharing that. It's something that's out there. It's free to use. Ready. It's kind of like a ready to go packaged thing we have. You don't have to do a mediation. You can just grab it off our website and use it with your household. And just want to remind the board on the calendar, there's 2 regular meetings left in the year, November 10th and December 11th. So those are the only 2 left, or December 12th, sorry. The November 10th will be our last one with the current board, and December 12th will be the first one with the new board. But I'm hoping we could still have our outgoing board members at December 12th so we can do a kind of a goodbye and welcoming ceremony, since it's the first time we're doing it. So please keep those 2 dates in mind, that there are the last 2. If you have any agenda items, please get them in as soon as you can. If there's anything maybe urgent that you know of that we might need to have a special meeting for in between those, also let me know so we can plan. But those are the last 2 of the year. So our agenda is limited what we can address for the rest of this year. But kind of separately, Bob and I talked, and we did think it was maybe a good idea to do another retreat. So that's another one where we'll see, do we want to get it done in 2020 or do it at the beginning of 2021? We'll see what's most effective, but that, we do have an extra meeting essentially, since we usually do 3 by the end of the year, but we have 2 this time. So we do have that extra time. And lastly, we have a new system for staff project and program management that Deborah and I are working on developing. So it'll be a great way to be really transparent and more effective in what's being worked on by the staff of the IVCSD. And then we could eventually start sharing that in the board meetings. And then the board can know what's being worked on, what's been accomplished. The public can know that, and then we can know when we're adding new, how it balances out with everything else, and what the general workload is and accomplishment rate is. So that's something that's in development, and that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you for that report, Jonathan. Well, I'm looking forward to those developments, and looking forward to, well, we can talk about the retreat at a later date, but I think that would be a great activity for us to do once our new board is settled in. So with that, our next meeting date will be November 10th, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Made by Freeman and seconded by Nguyen. Any public comment? Any more board discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote.
Dr. Brandt?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Bertrand?
I vote yes, and congratulations on the California Air Resources Grant. That's fantastic news.
Thank you. Hedges?
Yes.
Thurlow?
Yes.
Geis? And Nguyen.
Yes.
Cool.
All right, motion passes. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on November 10th.